Milk is not the problem. If you're concerned about climate impact, you're much better off reducing consumption of soft drinks and alcohol.
Hey, this is Ryan of Happy Healthy Vegan. So unlike the vast majority of content creators you see me responding to here, I actually watch this content creator's content, Wall Street Millennial. I'm a fan of tech, business, finance, stuff like that. So I was stoked. Oh, a video on Oatly. What went wrong with Oatly? Why their business go down so quickly? So yeah, I was happy. I thought the first half of his video was really well done, a great explanation of what went wrong with Oatly, and I recommend you guys go and watch. In fact, I'll link to it down here in the show notes and up there. But it was the second half of his video where he tries to justify the continued consumption of dairy despite its many problems, where his video falls apart. As you'll see, there's logical fallacies, misinformation at times, and I know a little bit about what I'm talking about here. I've had this vegan YouTube channel since 2013, so I've discussed many aspects of what surrounds veganism. And by the way, let's just get clear from the outset what veganism is, so that you're all on the same page. It's not an environmental movement or a health movement. It's a stance against animal cruelty and exploitation. It just so happens that vegan and plant-based diets have some very positive environmental benefits. So anyway, let's jump right into his video.
On the surface, it might be surprising that oat milk is so much more expensive than cow milk. You need to feed cows for them to produce milk. Shouldn't oat milk be much more efficient because you're turning grain directly into milk? As it turns out, raising dairy cattle is extremely cheap.
Well, there's several reasons for that. One is the unfair subsidies that the dairy industry receives, both for the production of raising cows, and secondly, for the marketing of their products. None of these benefits are enjoyed by plant-based milks.
According to a study by the University of California, Davis, the vast majority of a dairy cow's diet is made up of hay and byproducts. Hay is extremely cheap to produce. It can be grown on poor quality land that is not suitable for growing other crops.
While hay often is cheap, a drought here in California could send the prices of hay doubling pretty quickly. And he doesn't mention at what cost this cheap hay comes at. Have a look here from another study from the University of California, Davis, as he referred to one from them earlier. And you'll see here water usage in California as far as agricultural crops go. And you'll see hay, forages, alfalfa, by far are the greatest abusers of California's precious water. So much so that water for hay accounts for about 50% of water from the Colorado River. And if you're not aware of the water situation here in the Southwest, this water is in great demand. There's disputes over who gets it between California, Nevada, Arizona, and Mexico gets very little. So yeah, most of this water, this precious water, is going to feed cattle cheaply. And he also glosses over the fact that dairy cows are fed grains such as soy, of which 77% of global soy is used as feed for livestock, primarily for meat and dairy, meaning all that soy grown out there, very little of it reaches human mouths, and the same can also be said for corn.
About 40% of the cow's diet is byproducts. For example, lemonade and pomegranate juice producers create huge amounts of lemon and pomegranate rinds. Because cows have very strong stomachs, they can eat these byproducts, which are inedible for humans. These byproducts have no other use and would otherwise end up in a landfill. This organic waste would emit methane if it were allowed to decompose in a landfill. When the cow digests these byproducts, it produces methane. Thus, the cow gets blamed for methane that would have been emitted anyway.
So this is the first and probably the biggest fallacy Wall Street Millennial commits in his analysis here, the false equivalency fallacy. He's pretty much saying, hey, it's the same thing. Plants, when they decay, there's some methane emission. And cows, when they fart and belch, there's methane emission there, and it's all a wash. Why are the cows the ones getting blamed for this? So unfortunately for Wall Street Millennial's analysis, the amount of methane produced from plant waste and cow farts are not equivalent. Let's look at some data here from Wikipedia, and as you'll see here, the amount of methane from cow farts compared to plant waste is probably at least double, 30% versus 15%. Therefore, his analysis here of the equivalence of methane emissions is just plain sloppy and flat out wrong.
But there's an even more fundamental problem with these comparisons. Obviously, milk produces some greenhouse gas emissions, so if you want to reduce your carbon footprint, you should stop drinking milk, right?
Yeah, I suppose so, but I can think of some better reasons, such as why needlessly force animals into a life of exploitation and slaughter so humans can drink a milk from another species which we're never intended to drink from, and drink it at an age at which no other species drinks milk at.
What would be the best thing to replace it with?
Replace cow's milk? Who says we have to? This is the second logical fallacy, a false premise, which means an incorrect proposition, meaning that we need to replace drinking milk with some other drink by forming the basis of an argument will almost certainly lead to an invalid or logically unsound conclusion, as which we see will happen here.
Water seems like an obvious choice. Water production generates almost zero greenhouse gas emissions.
Water? Does anyone seriously consider that as some kind of replacement for milk?
But there's a problem with this. Water has 0 calories and 0 nutritional value.
Nutritional value? Well, the National Institutes of Health say that water is a critical nutrient whose absence will be lethal within days. Which shows you how vastly different water is from cow's milk. You can't even compare the two. Cow's milk you don't need to consume in order to be alive, and me and all other vegans are living proof of that. Water, as you see, if you don't drink water within a few days, you risk death. But don't take my recommendations here about not needing dairy. I'm just a music producer. Let's see what some actual nutrition professionals say. Let's say like a PhD and R&D, Allison Childress. She says the recommended 3 cups per day of dairy milk is too high for most people. And she adds, humans do not need dairy milk in order to get all of their nutrients in a healthy diet. Did you hear that, Wall Street Millennial, who's assuming that we need to have a replacement for milk in order to get the nutrients back in our diet that went missing from eliminating milk? You don't need to replace dairy with some other drink or anything. If you have a balanced, sensible, healthy vegan diet, according to all these health organizations from around the world, you will meet your nutritional needs. You don't need dairy.
Thus, if you replace all of your milk with water, you need to eat more food to replace the nutritional content you used to get from milk.
Again, no one is replacing dairy milk with water. No one would ever want to do that because it's completely absurd and nutritionally nonsensical.
The extra food you eat may generate more carbon emissions than the milk you gave up. A paper published in the Food and Nutrition Research publication tried to quantify this. It compares various beverages based on their greenhouse gas emissions as well as their nutritional value. The nutritional value is based on the Nordic nutrition recommendations. Milk indeed has one of the highest greenhouse gas emissions, almost 5 times as much as oat milk. But cow milk also has a ton of essential nutrients, including protein, calcium.
Alright, I just gotta cut you off right there. I mean, why are you pointing out protein for? Are you implying that oats are without protein, which they're not, and essential nutrients? Well, they happen to have a great one called fiber, which around 90% of Americans are lacking in, deficient in. Furthermore, one of the fibers in oats, beta-glucans, are known to lower LDL cholesterol and may decrease your risk of heart disease. Try that with dairy milk. No, actually, please don't try that with dairy milk. It's not going to work, and it's cruel to the animals.
Nutrients, including protein, calcium, phosphorus, vitamin A, vitamin D.
He's sure making it sound like if you're not drinking dairy milk, you'll be somehow at risk of not getting vitamin A and D because you're not substituting it back in. Doesn't mention, though, that at least here in the United States, dairy milks are fortified with vitamins D and A. I'm not saying milk is devoid of all nutrients. I'm just saying milk here is fortified. And speaking of like a substitute product you might use instead of dairy milk, like say the oat milk I have in my refrigerator right now. I looked on the carton on the back, and sure enough, it has vitamins A and D and riboflavin.
Cow milk also has a ton of essential nutrients, including vitamin A, vitamin D, riboflavin, and many others.
Yep, got those in my oat milk. Plus, oats have many others as well, including these fine vitamins and minerals.
Milk has the most essential nutrients of any of the drinks they compared.
Well, that's wonderful, but plants as well have vitamins and nutrients. In fact, referring back to that article I showed earlier with that nutritionist that said you don't need to drink dairy to get all your nutritional needs met, they also mentioned that regular fruits and vegetables contain plenty of potassium, calcium. Humans generate vitamin D when exposed to sunlight. and some non-dairy milk products are fortified with this vitamin, as I showed with mine. And that underscores the fact that 75% of Americans are not eating enough fruits and vegetables. So unlike what Wall Street Millennial is asserting here, or falsely assuming that we need to have dairy as part of our nutritional intake or else we're not going to meet our nutritional needs, no, we don't need to drink dairy. Again, that's not my belief. That's the opinion of health professionals. Just eat more plants. You'll get more nutrients by just ditching the dairy and eating food. Like, really, who really relies on liquids to meet their nutritional needs? Just get it from the food you're eating. And again, a balanced, well-planned vegan diet meets all your nutritional needs.
They divide the essential nutrients by the greenhouse gas emissions to calculate the Nutrient Density to Climate Impact Index, or NDCI. This represents the bang for your buck. How much nutritional value do you get in return for your greenhouse gases? The higher the NDCI, the better. Milk has the highest NDCI by far. Soft drinks and alcohol are the worst. They emit significant greenhouse gases, but have almost zero essential nutrients.
Just like with water, but even worse, I really hope no one's trying to meet their nutritional needs by drinking alcohol. Like, you have to get your daily wine or beer intake in order to hit the nutritional target you're reaching for.
Oat milk is also one of the worst. While it has very little greenhouse gas emissions, it also has very little essential nutrients.
I'm sorry, I don't know what brand of oat milk this study was using, but the one I showed you here compares favorably to the nutritional profile of what you find in dairy, minus, like, you know, the saturated fat stuff, which raises your LDL cholesterol, the pus, and potential antibiotics and stuff like that, and has no cruelty. And need I repeat one more time, you don't need to rely on liquids to meet your nutritional needs.
Milk is not the problem. If you're concerned about climate impact, you're much better off reducing consumption of soft drinks and alcohol.
I mean, when I first heard that, I had to rewind. Did I hear that right?
Milk is not the problem. If you're concerned about climate impact, you're much better off reducing consumption of soft drinks and alcohol.
Yeah, that's what he said. Ignore all the cow farts, methane, animal agriculture, greenhouse gas emissions. Ignore all that. Just stop drinking booze and soda. But let's look at some of the actual data that shows what he's saying is just completely dangerous to say to his large following. Such as animal agriculture is responsible for 18% of greenhouse gas emissions. Put that in perspective, that's more than the combined exhaust from all transportation. And that livestock and their byproducts account for at least 32 million tons of carbon dioxide per year, or 51% of all worldwide greenhouse gas emissions. And that cows produce 150 billion gallons of methane per day. And that methane, which is, you know, cow farts and burps, is 25 to 100 times more destructive than CO2 on a 20-year time frame. So given the environmentally destructive nature of animal agriculture, and yes, that includes your dairy production, Wall Street Millennial, it should come as no surprise that the United Nations recommends a vegan followed by a vegetarian diet as the top two most climate-friendly diets when we're talking about greenhouse gas emissions. And not too surprisingly, nowhere in these UN dietary recommendations to help save our planet from climate destruction do they say, just give up on the booze and sugar water. That's the culprit. That'll get it done. For anyone who's doubting what I say about all the statistics and data I showed there a minute ago, go back and rewind and you'll see my sources are not like vegan activists or anything like that. It's like United Nations, governmental publications, peer-reviewed studies, stuff like that. I'm not making this up. I'm telling you what the scientific consensus is. Rather trying to base my conclusions like Wall Street Millennial did on one single study, it's much better to have a body of evidence, a scientific consensus supporting your claims. So if any Wall Street Millennial stands are watching still at this point, again, I want to make it clear, I'm a fan too. I'm not here to hate. I'm just pointing out some inaccuracies in his video. And I don't think his intentions were like mean or evil or sinister or anything like that. I don't think he's like being paid by the meat or dairy industry to spread this misinformation. I just think he's just misinformed like the general public is about some aspects of veganism, about the bad destructive environmental impacts of animal agriculture. I don't think he's an anti-vegan is what I'm saying. So that's why I make these response videos, to try to set the record straight. I wish my video would have the same reach as some of these people like Wall Street Millennials have, but I try my best. So if you want to help me out and help spread the truthful rebuttal back, please share my video, hit like, share this video like I said, comment down below. Again, we're a very civil, evidence-based community here, so be civil. If you disagree with what I say it in a civil way. And if you'd like to tell me to my face, please, I invite you to come to my Friday live stream, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Let me know. Be glad to discuss this with you. So, guys, until remember next time, doesn't suck being vegan.